And I say, you got dissolved. And they say, no, I didn't. I say, you got dissolved. And I put a dot of filler in it. It immediately goes back. And interestingly, you don't even put much filler. You like touch it with filler and the body just starts to rehydrate it. It's a pretty interesting phenomenon.
I wanted to pick you up. You've mentioned the SMAS layer several times in some of your answers now. And I remember there was a post you did quite a while ago. And one of my colleagues, Gillian, pointed it out to me because you mentioned that the hyaluronidase can, I think you said the words dissolve some of the SMAS, and it left one of your patients with a little crease above their lip. Now, that was a bit controversial, not because it's, controversial, but like, I don't know what the evidence for it was. So when you've done your facelifts or you've done surgeries, do you actually see thinning of that SMAS layer or is that just your interpretation of it?
Yeah, no, it's a repeated observation. And so it's over like several thousand, if you combine facelifts and lip lifts and me looking at the SMAS, let's say like 5,000 of them, okay? And after seeing 5,000, you start to see the natural changes that occur in different people, different ethnicities, different face types, different densities, hyperelastic people, overfilled people, and you start to see a pattern. And then you see things from heat damage that occur, whether it's Ulthera or other kinds of radio frequency, and then dissolver. And dissolver has its own kind of changes that you see. And nobody fully understands what the dissolver is doing, but I'll tell you that the logic that people use is very incorrect. So the logic they use for understanding dissolver is someone told them at some point that if you put a hyaluronidase into the skin or wherever of somebody, it's naturally going to make more hyaluronic acid within 3 hours. Okay. So that's not reality. And we most of us would know that's not reality. Nobody argues the 3-hour thing. Like you dissolve somebody, they'll dehydrate pretty exaggerated for the first couple of days. And it takes them about 2 weeks to rehydrate. Yeah. And most injectors kind of see that pattern. What they're not noticing is the depressions that form afterwards or the darkening in the skin in certain areas. And once people hang out with me for a couple of days, I show it to them because it's pretty common. I say, push on the teeth here and you'll see it's deflated. They're missing some of that SMAS. And that's not during surgery. That's just somebody that comes in the office and I show it to them and they say, oh my God, you're right. And I say, watch this. I put a dot of filler back and it fills it back up and the color starts to reflect appropriately again. Now, why does this happen in some people and stay for 10 years, whereas in other people it doesn't? That I don't know. My guess is that most people who get dissolved are already damaged. So they have microcystic expansion of the layers under the skin. And if you look under the skin where most filler sits for lip, let's say, because that's easy, lip filler, when it migrates, sits in the SMAS. That's where it is because it was in the lamina propria and it travels in the same plane, which is the SMAS. You only see it in the dermis up here if somebody injected it directly into the dermis for wrinkles. So when you see lip filler up in the philtrum, it's almost always SMAS. And if it's Juvederm, for example, it'll go 1 centimeter. It can go about 10 millimeters. And I try to tell people, Juvederm is not the worst filler. Not all Juvederm migrates, but all migrated filler is Juvederm. So you understand that? That's how. So you can do Juvederm and not have it migrate. But I'll tell you, all migrated filler, which is a centimeter above, is Juvederm. And it has a hydrophilic potential and it has that glare that makes it white. So with those people who have specifically these fillers that sit in the SMAS, it causes a microcystic expansion of the SMAS. So the SMAS that used to be 3 millimeters becomes 5 millimeters. And it sits like that for a year. And a year is enough to damage that tissue. And now you're dissolving somebody who already has damaged tissue. It collapses, but it goes to 2 millimeters. It never comes back to the natural 3. I don't know why it doesn't recover, but it doesn't recover. And as far as like your examination, you notice that because you can feel it and you can feel the teeth right through it. It's pretty depressed, or it looks dark. They look like they have a mustache line. If you do a surgery, it's a whole different thing. So I open up a lip lift and I showed a surgeon yesterday who came in and I was operating on his wife. And I showed him, or I asked him during the surgery, I said, it looks like she's been dissolved at some point in the central third of her lip, but not the lateral parts. And he said, yeah, but I did it 3 years ago. And you can see it. It's not, I'm not guessing, I've seen it thousands of times. And so you go in there and it's not just the look of it, but What it is the SMAS is deflated to something like 2 millimeters rather than the healthier part that you usually see. And it's darker. It's darker because it has no hydratory potential. It doesn't carry water anymore. And the dissection is also different. You no longer have this loose areolar greasy feeling. It's a dry, matted feeling versus the side of the lip looked totally healthy. And I showed him the SMAS and I said, look, it's glistening. That's a healthy SMAS. And I put my scissor in it and went, boom, spreads like no problem. So these are the tissue characteristics that I see visibly repeated. I've seen it 3,000 times in a lip. I've seen it a couple thousand times in a face. So I recognize it. Now, I've never gone through things to prove why it happens, how it happens. It's not really my concern. You know, I'm not like the scientist, but I've seen it so many times. And the controversial part of it would be, why is it happening? Why does it happen to some people and not others? It's not that it's actually happening. People who argue that it happens or not, they haven't seen it. You know, they come visit me one day, I'll show it to them in one day and they get it. You know, most people haven't seen it. So the people who argue it really just don't see the issues that I'm talking about. But they're pretty common, and they're more common in places in the face that carry more water. So if you look in the under eye, for example, there's no SMAS layer. In the under eye, so if you look at the mid face, there's thick SMAS, zygomatic arch, it tapers off to nothing. Under eye, it tapers off to nothing. There's no real SMAS layer there. So you could dissolve the under eye all day, every day. Just keep doing dissolver. The only thing you really see is an exaggerated dehydration in the first week, and then it rehydrates, and maybe the skin looks a little wrinkled because it was expanded for so long. But you don't see a big problem with it. The places that have thicker SMAS, like the mid face and the lip, you see a visible depression because there's a thick SMAS layer. It's your hydratory layer. And if that person doesn't rebound, they lose their hydratory capacity. And so they can't rehydrate, and your body forgets about it for some reason. I don't know why. It forgets about it. And it stays dehydrated, a little depressed. You can feel it, and they look dark. And I've seen people who had it years ago, and I say, you got dissolved. And they say, no, I didn't. I say, you got dissolved. And they say, oh, like 10 years ago. And I say, look at that depression. And I put a dot of filler in it. It immediately goes back. And interestingly, you don't even put much filler. You touch it with filler, and the body just starts to rehydrate it. It's a pretty interesting phenomenon, which I don't fully understand.
Thanks so much for watching the video. If you want to listen to the whole podcast, go to your favorite podcast app and search for Inside Aesthetics.
If you like the videos we're putting out, please consider subscribing to our channel. Give us a like, smash the bell icon so that you get notified when we put out more content.
If you'd like to support us, our Patreon link is down below, and you can also follow us on Instagram on our personal accounts.